What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Sporting Cast podcast. Hope you guys all had a wonderful Thanksgiving break. And we're back for episode 6. This is a very special person in my life. He helped make me who I am today and helped many other people, and that's the coach. Tim Ray, my high school cross country and track coach, made a very positive impact on my life. Tim has been with the program for over 20 years and recently shifted over the last couple of years to coach the high school basketball team. Tim played basketball at Ball State, had a very unique journey on how he walked on there, why he got into coaching, and he's going to talk a little bit about that and the advice that he has for current athletes that know they want to be a coach in the future. So sit back and we will have him on soon. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to episode 6 of the Sporting Cast podcast. As I said before, a very special guest, my high school coach, Chesterton's current basketball coach, a savior to many, a teacher to many, and a coach to many, Tim Ray. Tim, how are you today, my friend?
I'm wonderful, Lucas. How are you?
I'm doing good. How was your Thanksgiving? What's the go-to meal? What's new with you? How's the basketball looking out right now?
Thanksgiving was good. You know, it's always nice to meet up with family and catch up with my sisters, some that I don't get to see as often as I'd like. And probably my go-to is my mom's stuffing. I love her stuffing. It's awesome. And basketball is going good. You know, we're in full swing now and in the middle of it, and it goes by really quick.
How's the summer? You know, as we'll get more into it, you're not coaching cross country anymore. You're not waking up at 6 a.m. for those early morning runs, but you got basketball now. So what's the difference in summers to what it is now versus what it was?
The summers are quite a bit different. You know, when you coach cross country, it's not as lengthy per practice. So you may, you know, even on long runs, you know, you're there for 2 hours, maybe 2 hours, 15 minutes. And then if you stay after and chat a while, you know, it might be a little bit longer. But in terms of basketball, you know, you get there early in the morning. We usually go from 8 to 10. And then the way we do things at Chesterton is we really get our youth involved in our camps. And it's not just your typical week-long camp. We'll go 2 days a week with maybe our kindergarten and first graders. That will just be a week. But our second through fourth grade will go 2 days a week for 4 weeks. Mid-mornings and then afternoons are our older group, and they'll also go 2 days a week for 4 weeks. And then our middle schools. So it's a lot of time on the coach's part. But we are already seeing the dividends of that time with our middle school programs, with our second, third, fourth grade, fifth graders, and then obviously when they get up to our high school team. So it's you know it's a lot of work, but as you know, when you want to become great at something, you got to put the work in.
No, for sure. And like I said, here we have Tim Ray, former Chesterton cross-country coach, current assistant basketball coach for the high school men's team. Coach, for me, you made a big impact on my life, a lot of runners, a lot of hoopers, probably kids that you just taught from that standpoint as well. Talk to me about your journey. You know, I know, you know, not only just putting in the work, but, you know, you have to have a little bit of luck and you have to be at the right place at the right time. And your journey kind of starts when you're thinking about playing basketball at the collegiate level. Talk to me about kind of what your high school career was like. You know, I know it wasn't recent. You know, you are the first guest older than me on this show, so congrats. We'll get you a certificate for that if that's okay. We'll print it out. We'll print it out with color. But no, talk to me about going from, you know, your high school to wanting to play basketball at the next level, and it wasn't something easy for you, and then how you ultimately got into coaching.
Sure. It was, you know, obviously when I was growing up, you looked to do multi-sports. And so when I was real young, I wanted to be a Major League Baseball player. And then, as I continued to develop my love for the game of basketball, it was just a dream of mine to play at the highest level that I could. And so as I was in high school, it was a rough 4 years. Coach Fred Mitchell was the high school coach at the time. And all through middle school, I could vividly remember going to open gyms and being the only middle school kid there. And my dad had always said, if you want to be good at anything, you have to put the work in, number one. But number two, you have to kind of challenge yourself. And so as a young middle school kid, I always wanted to play guys that were better than me. So I started going to the open gyms when I was real young, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade at the high school. And Coach Mitchell kind of knew my father, knew me just from obviously going to all the open gyms. And so when I was a freshman, things were looking really good. I had a great summer, and there were 4 freshmen at the time that were kind of asked to try it for the JV. And so we tried for the JV, and one of the other kids decided that he didn't want to play JV. So he actually told our JV coach at the time, Mr. Nellenwag, that he was just going to stay down a freshman. So then Mr. Nellenwag came to me in class, and he says, Timmy, he's like, you know what? We're going to go ahead and just keep you down on JV because or keep you down on freshman because we're going to keep both of you up for JV. So I was a little bit discouraged, but I really enjoyed my freshman coach, Mr. Woolover, and that experience on the freshman team. And then my buddy and I and 2 other kids got moved up to the JV team my freshman year and actually started the 3 of the last 4 games. Had a real positive experience. But unfortunately, Coach Mitchell got let go, and we had another coach come in, and it was just really a roller coaster the next 3 years. It was just not a real good experience, and it was something that kind of discouraged me a little bit, but I just felt that kind of I didn't know if I wanted to continue with basketball after the roller coaster ride I had the next 3 years or not. I didn't get any offers to go anywhere. My parents weren't real knowledgeable about the next level. And so the easy route for me was, you know what, I'll just follow my sister's footsteps and I'll just go to Ball State. I knew I wanted to be a teacher. I had a real good inclination that I wanted to coach. So I said, I'll just follow my sister to Ball State because that was what I was kind of familiar with. And then I said, you know what, maybe I can go ahead and try to walk on there. So first year I get to Ball State and went to tryouts. And at the time at Ball State, they didn't have – if you tried out as a walk-on at Ball State, they had a team called the 6-man team. And so that was kind of like a practice squad. There were just 6 guys there. And if you made that team, you were pretty much just the scout team. And then you got to dress every, 3 home games. So you end up dressing maybe 6 games for the whole year. And so I go try out for this. And the last day of tryouts, I overslept. And, obviously I don't make it. But my roommate did. Actually, 2 of my roommates did, or 2 guys that I knew. One of them was my roommate. They made it, but they couldn't do it because of their schedules, so they didn't do it. Sophomore year rolls around. I'm going to try out again, and this time it's kind of a funny thing when you look back on it. As you know, growing up in the 90s, the grunge look, the alternative look, was hot and heavy. So I had grew my hair when I actually had hair. I had that thrown out a little bit more, and had some like cut off khakis almost. And I'll never forget this ever. We go through the layup lines just to start the tryouts, and I shoot one layup, and the assistant coach calls me over and he goes, "What's your name?" And I tell him, and he's like, "Okay." So I'm standing right next to him. He writes my name down on the no list. So I'm the first one on the no list. So I was like, nah, all right. So
off to a good start.
Oh, right? You think? So I didn't make that team either. And then the third year, I tried out. I went to tryouts. I felt like I had a good tryout. And this year, they had a new coach, Ray McCallum, and they didn't have a six-man team anymore. They just had, if you made the team, then you were part of the team. So I tried out. Another one of my roommates tried out. He makes the team. I don't. But he was an architect major, so he couldn't make the practices because all of his architecture classes were in the afternoon. So really nobody had made it that year. So fourth year, which is kind of ironic, because you had Chris and Nick Mullen on earlier.
Yep.
Earlier.
The Mullen boys.
Yes, absolutely. And funny story about that is their grandfather, Roger Sargent, was my middle school basketball coach and my middle school cross country coach. And he got me introduced to cross country, and he would have open gyms in summer. And just through conversation, as you know, when you play pickup basketball, you start talking to guys. And I was talking to Mr. Sargent, mentioning the fact that I don't know if I was going to try out again. And he's like, "Man," he goes, "you're doing really well. Like, you play really well." He goes, "I think you should try out again." I said, "I don't know." So fast forward, I ended up trying it out my last year. And sure enough, I got the call when I was in my apartment, which was another little side funny story. My roommate answers, whose name is Jim, and they thought that they were asking for him. And so he had the phone and he's talking, and all of a sudden he goes, and we were all in the same room together, and he kind of says out loud, he goes, no, he goes, I go, "This is Jim." He goes, "I think you're asking for Tim." So he answers the phone, and he's got these bright eyes on it. I'm like, "What are you doing?" And I'll never forget the phone call. He goes, "This is Coach McClintock, who's one of the assistant coaches at the time." And he's like, "I would really love, we would really love for you to come out and play for Ball State." And I was, of course, just thrilled to death. And, so that kind of kick-started off my basketball journey at Ball State. And I can't quote me on this, but I know during my tenure there, I was the only walk-on to actually make the team and to travel. And actually, I was like the 9th, 10th guy because we had a couple of injuries and a couple guys leave the program. So that first year there, I got to travel and was really welcomed with open arms, and the guys treated me great. Coaches treated me wonderfully, and then at the end of that year, I was supposed to be done with school because that was my 4th year. And they asked me if I wanted to come back and stay another year. And I was like, "Yeah, I don't want to grow up yet. Are you kidding me? No, this is unbelievable." So I stayed on the next year and had a wonderful time doing it. And then, from there, kind of, and at the time, the head coach at Chesterton had just left. And so I talked to some of the assistant coaches at Ball State, and they said, "Yeah, we'll give you a good word." So they kind of threw my hat into the ring for that job, and ended up becoming the JV coach right even before I graduated. I was still doing my student teaching, and became the JV coach at Chesterton.
So
sorry, that was kind of a long.
No, that's what it's here for. Listen, it's your story, it's your journey, and just to dive in a little bit more with your college experience. 2 things that come to mind. First, one, I know you Ball State isn't necessarily looked at as a big-time basketball school, right? But you played with Bonzi Wells, a 10-year NBA veteran. What was it like playing with someone to his caliber at Ball State?
Well, as you know, as time passes, things continually evolve.
Mm-hmm.
And during the 1980s and 1990s, the Mid-American Conference was you talk about like Butler's run that they had.
Yep.
And you talk about some of these, they call them mid-majors, some of the runs they've had in recent years. Well, at the time, 80s and 90s, the Mid-American Conference was the like, you want to talk about like going from Big Ten, ACC, Pac-10. The Mid-American Conference was probably the top tier mid-major level through the 80s and 90s. I mean, Ball State went to the Sweet 16. In the year that they did that, they gave UNLV, who won the national championship that year,
a run for their money.
Absolutely. I think they lost by a bucket. The Mid-American Conference and Ball State in general were like the top of the top for mid-majors. And so the level of basketball was really, really outstanding. Going from high school where at the time, if you had a in-game dunk, it was talked about for weeks at the time, where now it's like an everyday occurrence. So going from that to a high, top mid-major level and playing the game a lot differently, which is played above the rim, the speed, the quickness, the athleticism, it was something that I had to adjust to. But I thought that I was strong enough. I thought I was quick enough to take care of that and to make sure that I was not out of my realm. And Bonzi was one of those guys that was just an athletically gifted individual. His quickness, his ability to anticipate. I know he's the Mid-American Conference leader in steals.
Two-way player.
He's the all-time leading scorer still. So it just gave me a different point of view of the level that some people kind of take for granted as a spectator watching it through the television or even way up in the stands. You don't understand how big and strong and fast some of these guys are. So it just gave me a better perspective on it. Yeah.
And you can still shoot the rock. He's not going to say it, but Timmy was likes the three ball and was probably the Steph Curry of his Ball State days back in the day. I know he won't say that, but I've seen the man shoot, and he's got a clip that very few have when it comes to the sport of basketball. So we'll just leave it at that. But the other question for you was, how did you score your first point in college?
I scored my first point. Well, I actually scored quite a bit in some of the exhibition games, but obviously those don't count towards a record book. But my first and I think my first and only basket was against Miami of Ohio. It was kind of like a little press breaker, and I had broken the press and then ended up leaking out underneath the hoop, and they found me, and I caught it and laid it up. Made that. So
did you call bank or
No.
So no, what did you learn from your college experience? Because I know one thing that has resonated with me and something that you've told me in the past is, and this is one of my favorite things about you and what I think every coach should try to emulate in their own style, is that phone call to Jim or Tim. You said that feeling of making the team is something that you want every athlete that you coach could experience in some way.
Right.
Can you just kind of elaborate on that and then talking to coach in high school?
As I'm a firm believer that experience is the greatest teacher in the world. Once you go through certain experiences, you learn from it, and then you take that and you pass it on to the next generation and so forth. Like I told you, Major League Baseball player really early, but probably about sixth or seventh grade, 6 or 7.
Oh,
6 or 7
no, that's
grade,
a teacher.
right?
That's a teacher joke right there.
I know. But around 7th grade, you start planting the seed of, hey, you know what? I watch enough basketball to be like, I want to go do that. And obviously, the physical or lack of physical gifts that I was blessed with, being 5'9", that your chances continue to be cut down and just are very minute. But as a kid, as you plant those seeds of the dream. A dream like, this is the ultimate goal. Where do I want to go with this? And you keep kind of plugging away and plugging away and plugging away, and you put all the hours in and the shots and the I vividly remember being out in my backyard and going on my porch and jumping, touching the gutter 50 times and doing my push-ups, doing my sit-ups, doing all these things. And that dream is still out there. And the next year passes, the next year, and then you go on to college and it's still the dream. And you fail the first time, and it's like, okay, you fail the second time, you fail the third time, and the fourth time you make the team, and it's that dream come true. And obviously I had not had that experience through athletics at Chesterton the way that some people might experience some things in their early high school athletic careers. I didn't get the chance to experience that. And so when I got that phone call, it was a feeling I had never experienced before. And every time I think about that voice, I mean, it is clear as day. Mm-hmm. After all these years, I can still, hear Coach McClintock say, hey, we want you to come play basketball. And it was, it was almost like I didn't know whether to cry because I was so happy or shout or scream or yell. I didn't know what to do. I was just kind of like lost for words. And so, I bottled that up, and I was never, ever, ever going to let it go. And then when I got into coaching, especially when I kind of decided, okay, this is going to be my profession now. What do I want the kids that either play basketball for me or they run for me? What do I want them to get out of it? Well, I want them to set goals. I want them to try to achieve it. But most importantly, I want them to try to believe in those goals, like to really deeply believe in them. And in that way, when or if they do happen, they can experience some of those same feelings that I got with that phone call. And on the flip side, even though that those maybe goals may not be achieved, you can always look back. Like, had I not made that team, would my life be different? Probably, just because, as you know, like the right place at the right time, who you don't know. But I don't think that the end goal would be the same. I would still want kids to feel success. And even though you may not be able to achieve that goal, the work that you put forth to go get that goal, that's success in itself. So.
No, that's great. No, I think, something that you always preach to guys before me, myself, and guys after me is, chase that feeling. And some of us, I think myself and a couple other guys around my age, do the success that we had, were able to have that feeling. But I think others also experience that later in life. And sometimes it's not even sports related, but it's that mindset that you help provide that I think really gave them, that person, that satisfaction or goal from whatever it wanted to happen. But no, good stuff. Take me into coming into coaching cross country. You start off in basketball, coaching JV, then you shift to cross country and track. How did that happen? And tell me about just that experience in general, in a nutshell, I'd say.
Sure. I stumbled across it, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. We were, as a college kid, and especially So I started doing my student teaching right. Like I got the JV basketball job, and then had to do my student teaching in the fall. And while I was doing my student teaching, I was also working at the steel mill. So I had gotten a job at the steel mill in the summer. Couldn't give that up because, as you know, when you graduate college, especially if you're not on a scholarship, you got to pay a lot of bills off. And so I needed to make, money. So that first year, I was like, okay, well, what else can I do? And I was like, you know what I can do? I think I'll coach cross country. And I remembered my time in middle school of how much I enjoyed that sport. High school, my sports, I played soccer in high school. That was enjoyable. Basketball, not so much. But cross country, I vividly remember Mr. Sargent making cross country enjoyable. It made me want to do it. So I was like, you know what, I can coach cross country. I'll just start coaching some middle school. I knew they had an opening. So I got the opening at the middle school in cross country. I did that for a year. And then Steve Kearney, who was the head girls and boys track, or boys and girls cross country coach at the time, said, hey, Tim, I got an assistant's job open. You want to come be the assistant? And I was kind of hesitant, because I only ran middle school cross country. I wasn't quite sure. I'd always run. I always enjoyed and loved the sport of running. I was in high school to get in shape for basketball. I'd be running, 3-4 miles, 3 days a week. And so I always enjoyed it. And so I was like, all right, you know what, I'll go ahead and do that, So I ended up becoming the assistant cross country coach. And I think Coach Kearney's vision was to try to bring somebody in to eventually take over. And that actually happened a lot quicker than I thought it was going to, with having no intention of doing that. And so I became the assistant cross-country coach. And in the meantime, the head varsity coach was going in a different direction. And so it was one in which, I don't want to say I didn't necessarily agree with, but we just kind of had different philosophies and different ways of going about things. Mm-hmm. So I was like, all right, I'll just stick with the assistant cross country coach. So I did that for 3 years, I think. And then the last 2 years, Coach Kearney was more like the director of the programs, where Jen Peterson ended up like being kind of like more of the head girls, and I was kind of like more of the head guys coach. And then Coach Kearney just kind of was like the head of it and just overseeing everything. And then that fall, I think it's fall of 2000, or no, I should say spring of 2000. I'm sorry, Lucas. Let me backtrack a little bit.
This is what happens when you have guests older than me on here. You get.
There it is.
All right, I'm done with those. I'm done with the older jokes.
But I'm back up. A couple years before that, I had been asked to be the distance track coach. So that kind of really got my foot into the high school level. So then, fast forward, and that spring, Coach Kearney had stepped down, and Coach Nelowag, Mr. Nelowag, who was the athletic director at the time, he said, hey, would you like to be the head soccer coach or the head cross-country coach? Because he had known that I played soccer in high school. And with my experience that I was having in cross-country, I really liked the family aspect of it. Through those three years, the other assistant time, Coach Tom Moeller, he and I just wanted to start implementing more of a family-type feel, because we had felt that it had gotten away from that a little bit. So we started, getting that family feel in it. And I told Mr. Nelowag, I said, I'd like to go ahead and be the head cross-country coach. So I kind of got my foot in the door there.
Yeah, so before we talk a little bit more about that, I will say I'm wearing my senior year track shirt. I don't really fit into it too well anymore. But for you, I did decide to wear this shirt, so I'm gonna need to hit the gym and maybe lose a couple pounds. But no, so you go into cross country and track. You have a wonderful experience. You probably learn different type of personalities just between running and basketball. But you get a runner-up state finish in 2009. David Osborne, Ryan Cutter, Shane Kenny.
Yeah.
Very good group. You get a very unique path in the 4x8 in track. You go from 2013 third place, 2014, right? Yeah, something like that. Third, second, first, 12, 13, 14. Yeah, 2012, 2013, 2014. Third, second, first, Billy Beal, Kevin Kenny, Tyler Vore, and Marlon Williams. And then you win another couple other semi-states in cross-country. Tell me just, that experience of coaching and what kind of taught you to just coach runners, and then how that helped go into what basketball is now.
Sure. Like when I first started as the when I first started as the distance coach for the high school and track, there are a couple of things that kind of stand out that kind of like really kind of carved the path of how I wanted the program run. Number one was on one of the runs that we had when I had first got the assistant job was we went for a semi-long run. It was like 8 miles, I think. And on our way back, the best guy at the time, Steve Verska, and I kind of took off. And we really hammered like the next probably 5 miles. We were going probably about 5:30 pace, really hammering it out. And we were both feeling really good. And we got back, and some of the other guys were just kind of like razzing us, especially Steve, because, obviously he was one of their peers. So it just kind of really, I go, what are you guys doing? And they're like, well, when somebody leaves a group like that, you got to give them a hard time. And I was like, whoa, no. I said, that's not what this is going to be about. I said, our goal is to continue to get better every day. And if somebody wants to go ahead and work hard, I go, you can't, that's not how this is going to work.
I remember that.
This is just not how it's going to work.
I think someone brought up that very similar word when I was on the team, and then you brought that up and you shut it down again. For sure.
And then I think they kind of understood that. And then throughout that season, the progression of especially our 4x8 team and how much improvement that they were actually getting, I think that really grabbed their attention. And I think that was kind of like the hook and the fish, kind of so to speak, where, all right, he knows what he's doing, and maybe we need to listen to him. And that year, we actually qualified for the state meet in the 4x8. And so that was the first, distance guy to qualify in a really long time at Chesterton.
Which was surprising because of the rich history that we had with, 3 individual state championships. I mean, at the time, I think other than Valparaiso and Carmel, we had the most state appearances in state history, right? And I think that still is pretty close. We're top 5.
Funny that you asked that, because I was with Mr. Lashenik today, a teacher friend of mine, and his sons ran for Valpo, and we were kind of looking at that, and we're actually number 5 in the state. So it's like this Bloomington North, Carmel, Valpo, and then us.
A rich history, to say the least.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
And so there was a dry spell there for Chesterton, and we go to the state meet, and we finished 10th. And we were about, I want to say, 0.2 of a second away from getting 9th, which is, as you know, is all state.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that kind of really cemented their belief in, if you work hard, good things are going to happen. And so that was kind of like the pillar of the entire program, and kind of leapt us to do wonderful things. And then as the seasons progressed, you know, as you know, I'm a bit of a competitor, and so
he's a little crazy, but we won't talk about those. In a good way, of course.
Just a little bit.
In a good way.
But I wanted our program to think the bigger picture. You know, it was one thing to be good, and you used to hear this a lot. Oh, they're Chesterton good. They're Chesterton good. You know, which would mean sometimes, you know, middle of the pack, or every once in a while get a sectional championship or a conference championship. And I wanted the consistency of being the best.
Yeah.
I wanted the consistency to be there. And so that's what our you know, goals were, is to not only be the best, but when the time mattered the most, to be the best. And obviously you have to have pieces to make that happen. Mm-hmm. You have. And one of the wonderful things about running, and I'll say this forever, I think distance runners are the toughest individuals out there. Because as you know, being a distance runner yourself, if you want to excel in this sport, it is something that is done every day. It's not, I'm going to take a couple of weeks off here, I'm going to take a couple. No, that's not how this works. The more time you put into it, the better that you're going to be. And as you know, you have guys that run 2, 3, 4 years in a row before they ever miss a day. Mm-hmm. So that kind of consistency to build the program up, and just having the kids understand that, hey, look, you can be a mediocre basketball player, and your physical abilities are going to allow you to be only so good. Where in running, I think that you don't have to be a great athlete to be an unbelievably talented runner. You just don't. You put the time in, the dedication, you're going to see results. And so that was kind of always the MO with cross country and track. And then, as you know, once you get success and those kids believe in the system of whatever it is that you're doing, whether it be in business, whether it be in athletics, once they understand that, then it just is passed down from year to year. You know, and obviously with the, you know, getting the trophies and, you know, a state championship in the 4x8, a state runner-up in the 4x8, a state champion or state runner-up in cross country, and all the successes at semi-state and sectional championships, DAC, they are unbelievable. There's no doubt about that. But through conversations with you, with a lot of former runners, the most pride I have, the most joy that I've had from coaching is the stories about stuff that happened outside of the championships. Mm-hmm. You know, we'll have numerous conversations and stories that come up on long runs that we had, or at camps, or you know, even particular races. You know, Lucas, your Maryville race will always stand out to me. You know, just watching you run that race and going out hard, and then basically walking.
Yeah, the YouTube video is a little rough to watch.
You know, those types of things, you know, is what the program is based upon. It's what it's built up. And then obviously, yeah, there's you know, I'm not gonna lie and downplay the championships. Those are wonderful too. But as you know, sometimes they happen and sometimes they don't.
Yep. Part of the journey.
Absolutely.
And we'll dive into basketball first. We get a little 2-for-1 special, but from at least a cross-country standpoint, just supporting cast, who helped you there, and any other advice? I know you said for at least runners, your advice would be, put in the work if you want to be a better runner. And from a coach's perspective, I think you kind of touched it on, is make it enjoyable for these kids to show up. Any other advice, but also more highlight just the supporting cast from your 20 years in cross country?
Obviously, as you know, Coach Tom Moeller, who's now the head coach at Chesterton, you want to call us the Batman and Robin, or however you want to call us. He's one of my dear friends now, and he brought up a great point. He goes, sometimes your life, through your life's journey, you meet different people, and you don't, it's amazing who you become friends with and who you don't. Coach Mueller is about my dad's age, and we're lifelong friends, and then you kind of, flip the script, Lucas, you're my lifelong friend,
Mm-hmm.
So, and we're probably the same age difference that Coach Mueller and I am.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, Coach Mueller was there for the entire ride. I thought we played off each other very well.
Good cop, bad cop?
Yeah. On occasions, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But I just thought that we both had the same vision, the same drive, the same goals. And at the end of the day, I think our love for not only the sport, but the kids that we were working with, I think that's hard to break.
Mm-hmm.
That's hard to not overcome obstacles wherever they may be, as when you're coaching with somebody, difference of opinion or different training philosophy. Our training philosophies pretty much identical, but it was that love for the student athlete that, tied us together and wanted to see kids succeed. I'll never forget going up on that podium. First time I saw him get teary-eyed, because he was a lifelong Chesterton runner, and his team was actually the last team that, was the highest placing team ever at Chesterton. And, to see him go through that and to be able to, for him to experience that, it was just kind of like that tie, that bond. So, Coach Mueller, obviously, and Coach Kearney, for giving the opportunity to do so, and, kind of like a little mentor for him, for me, and the girls' coaches, Coach Carden, and Coach Miskalik, who's there now, and Coach Peterson, who was there at the beginning. Just worked real well with all of those coaches. So those coaches. And I'm sorry, what was the second part of that?
Just the advice that we talked about. Make it fun. Yeah. Make it fun for the guys, and then for I don't know if you had anything else you want to include.
Yeah, no, just
put in the work.
Not only to make it enjoyable, but to I guess you could say, to show by example how much that sport means to you as a coach, how much you invest in it,
mm-hmm.
By showing up all the time, putting the time in. I think that's really important, that if you show up, then they kind of sometimes feel obligated. Hey, you know what? If he's doing all this work for me, that maybe, I can do this. And I would say probably the most important thing is just drilling home your belief in each kid, no matter how talented they are. No matter how talented. We had a kid, Adam Cunningham, who was not, by any stretch of the imagination, a great athlete, nor was he a great runner. But I'm pretty confident to say that if you talk to him today, he would say that I care about it.
Mm-hmm.
And as a coach, when you show, especially young student athletes, that they are very meaningful to you, and to instill in them the belief that you feel that they can accomplish great things. I think that's a huge key in kind of getting them to be successful.
Yep, absolutely.
But that mean that doesn't necessarily mean winning championships.
Whatever their definition of success is.
Absolutely. Just to get them to believe, just getting them to understand that I believe in them as much as possible. That's what I tell the coach.
Yeah.
A young coach, hey, and just pour everything that you have into it, and just make sure that you let your student athletes know that you believe in them, that they can be successful, that they are special.
And then the last thing I'll close, the motto is family, pride, tradition. Always stick to your roots of that. And then to what you said of, it may not necessarily help you if you show up to every practice, from a coach's or a runner's perspective, but it certainly won't hurt you. And,
right.
The last thing I'll say is something that you did, which I think a lot of guys respected, and my advice is you knew everyone's name every season, whether they were the first guy or the slowest guy. And, I don't know if every coach can necessarily say that in any sport for that matter through the program. So know your freshmen through seniors' names. I think that's something that's important.
Mm-hmm.
Closing that chapter, you go into basketball. You've already been able to be a part of that state runner-up team with the Mullen boys, Travis Grayson, a couple other guys, my boys OG and Nick Firm. What has the transition to basketball been like? The sport of basketball has been different, and we don't need to dive too deep into it. But now you're not only a coach, but you're coaching. Someone that you're coaching a roommate. Your son Tobias. So, what's kind of that journey been like? And then just any other valuable lessons and supporting Cass from that standpoint.
Sure. First I'll say I'm forever in debt to Coach Mark Urban, who's the head coach now. He had asked me, let me kind of just real quickly tell you a quick story. One of my best friends in the world, Shane Nelson, who was the strength and conditioning coach at the high school, his son had played for Coach Urban, Coach Urban's first 2 years. And so going into his son's junior year, they were looking for a new assistant coach. And Shane had mentioned, something about it to me, and he knew that I was still, heavy into cross country and track. And, I was like, yeah, I said, maybe I'll get back into it. I said, who knows, and so just from that little conversation, Coach Urban had contacted me, and I was kind of hesitant on getting back to him, and he'll even joke with you now that, he didn't know if I liked him or not, because I didn't really return his call right away. Once I did, I kind of talked to him as more like, hey, I wouldn't mind coaching some 8th grade. He's like, well, I'm looking for an assistant. Through some convincing over about a week and a half, I went ahead and took the assistant's job. And one of the things I noticed right away was Coach Urban's philosophies and the way he kind of went about things kind of coincided with the way we kind of ran our distance programs at Chesterton. Mm-hmm. So kind of right away, I kind of knew all right, this is, through divine intervention or whatever it may be, it just kind of felt like, all right, this is, I belong here. And so a couple of things that I've noticed throughout my tenure as the JV coach is there are similarities where, again, you put the work in, you're going to see results. And obviously the belief in yourself. I think that 2022 team from the start really believed that they were special and mm-hmm. that they were going to do special things.
Chris touched on that for sure.
Yeah. They just did. And the connection that they have, again, and I think that stems from the way Coach Urban kind of runs the program. the kind of with the way that we just really instill in these kids to be connected in everything they do. And as you know, in distance running, cross country, that connectivity is huge.
Continuity. Yep.
Absolutely. Knowing that you're going to battle and doing the same things with the guy next to you, it goes a long way to how successful you really become. So those are some similarities. One of the really unique things is so, obviously as you get older, your metabolism slows down quite a bit. And so obviously I looked nothing like I looked in, 2004, 2003, 2000, nothing. And you get around distance kids and they make you feel a little bit large.
Yeah.
But then you go to the basketball
the average
side.
person, now you're feeling small.
I feel small. So making that transition, I really feel that in some other schools, in some other instances, that the differences between the two is so great that it would be, a culture shock to you. But I think that there was just so many similarities between the two that the transition has not really been like, it feels like it's the same.
Mm-hmm.
It does. It feels like it's the same. It feels like, like I said, it's kind of where I belong. As far as coaching, my son, it's not easy.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. And I think part of the reason is because of who I am.
Mm-hmm.
I there are numerous times that I catch myself. I probably do not coach him anywhere near the way I coach other players, and that's probably not a good thing. I probably should, but it's as a child, I had a temper, and I had to work extremely hard in my youth to control that temper.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when I don't see my own kid doing certain things, I automatically just take myself out of the equation, because, I call it the crossroads factor, where if I take the left path, I'm going to crush him. And I'm going to rip him. I'm going to lose it. Or I'm going to take the right path, and you know what? I'll let one of the other coaches handle it.
Yeah.
And that's hard. And I'd say the other hard part about it is the spectator aspect of it. It's your kid.
Nerve-wracking, but you also have to coach.
You're right. It's your kid. You want as much success for your kid as possible. When you know how much work that they do, how much work they put into it, not just at practice, but outside of practice that other people don't see. The hours of shooting, the hours of, lifting and running and doing all these other things. So that's a very difficult aspect too. And I'm constantly reminding myself, especially in the games,
Mm-hmm.
focus. Your job, focus.
Big picture.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a little self-talk that I have. But there are, even though it's hard, there are very, very, very special moments, and I'm extremely grateful that I'm able to have with my son. Him starting his first game, that was special. A couple of other games that he's, had some success in had been special. That I get a first-hand seat and just to watch him develop and stuff like that. So.
And then the last thing, too, is just the state title run from a coach's perspective. We've seen it from Nick and Chris. I guess Nick was technically a coach at the time, but what does it mean to someone like you who played, didn't necessarily have that positive experience that you talked about, and then full circle, you go through a pretty tough sectional, finish the season 29-1, and lose to a very probably an all-time great Indiana high school team. But what was that experience like for you?
Well, let me hit that end point real quick, because I just had a conversation with Coach Urban and our other coaches, Coach White and Coach Botel, tonight about me going down a rabbit hole last night with that team. 4 of those guys have started or are starting at UCLA, Illinois, Nevada, and U of Indy. And the 5th guy is a star wide receiver for Kansas State University. So they were loaded.
Yeah, they were very good. With guys who were sophomores on that team that I think that eventually play at the next level too. But they were Comer, Booker, Davis,
Gibbs.
Yep, Gibbs.
And Jackson Edwards.
Thank you. No, very cool stuff. Do you have any? Let's go ahead.
As far as that season goes, each step of the way was extremely special. You win the second sectional since we had been there, and you just kept riding that momentum train. And as you're going through these steps, you're again, I go back to that belief philosophy of, you go through the season undefeated, and you're like, okay, and you win a tough conference game at home against Valpo in overtime and clinches a conference championship. Then you go to sectionals, you win that. Then you're playing at regionals. You have a tough morning game against Adams, and you win that. And then you're in the championship game of regionals, and you win the first
Penn, right?
Yeah.
Marcus Burton, Notre Dame, stud.
Yeah.
Yep.
His junior year.
He played great last night, 2 nights ago.
And you come out on top of there, and you just start that, believe we can do this. We can do this. And so each moment was special, and I think one of the great things, I don't think any of the players, I don't think any of the coaches were taking anything for granted, and we were literally soaking it all in.
Enjoy the moment.
Oh my gosh, it was, and sometimes I think that gets lost, when you just don't stop and look around and just absorb that. And I think Coach Urban and we just made sure that we enjoyed every step of the way, because we knew, that might be once in a lifetime thing. We don't want it to happen just once in a lifetime. You want it to happen all the time, but we knew that this was a special group, and then every step of the way was going to be special. We wanted to make sure that we remembered every step that we did take.
Any other people you want to get from a supporting cast, just from the basketball perspective? I know you mentioned Urban. Anybody else play a pivotal role, whether that was high school, college, now?
Sure. Obviously, my father, he played at Chesterton. He won a sectional championship in 1968. And so him planting the seed in his entire family of 3 sisters and 3 daughters and 1 son of, how meaningful the game of basketball is and what you can get out of it, and him showing us that sectional net kind of planted that seed, and the constant reminder of how special that was for him. And then probably Coach Buckley, Tim Buckley, at Ball State, who was the assistant coach at the time, and then was Tom Crean's top assistant at Marquette, and then IU. And I think he is at Cincinnati now, or maybe he's out west. But he's jumped quite a bit. He was in the pros for a little bit. Him and Coach Artie Papella, who doesn't coach anymore. He was Dan Dockage's assistant at Bowling Green after he was assistant at Ball State. So those 2 guys, really, during my time at Ball State, they really made me feel a part of the program. And just kind of looked out for me and made sure that I was treated like a regular teammate, and helped me get the junior varsity basketball job at the high school. So, so those guys, absolutely.
Coach, thank you for sharing your journey, your advice, and not only just making an impact on your athletes' careers and journeys, but also the communities. Somewhere like Chesterton, I think, whether it's cross country or basketball, there's a lot of support from the parents, alumni, and just the overall traveling experience. I mean, I was at the that state game, and there was a lot of people from Chesterton there, and so
yes,
appreciate what you've done and continue to make an impact on kids' lives. I think more coaches need to do what you do, and best of luck on your upcoming basketball season. I know you guys are just getting underway. We didn't talk too much about that today, but hopefully you're getting at least a sectional title and making a nice little run in next March.
I hope so.
Everyone, thank you again. Like, subscribe, and follow Chesterton's basketball season, led by Mark Urban and Tim Ray. Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, Lucas. Appreciate it, buddy.